Hey, this is Tyler Franklin with Tidewater Seed. I am in a cornfield in Eastern Virginia, and I'm struggling with all the phone calls and pictures and forecasts that I'm seeing and receiving. And I always try to be as optimistic as I can. I've been really impressed with how management and corn hybrids and these products have handled drought and can handle drought. And each year I'm encouraged how far we come. But this year the story is different. This is the most widespread worst drought I've seen in the past 15 years. And talking to a couple older farmers today, we think it might be the worst drought we've had here on the East Coast since 1977. So we're looking at a very big event that we have going on here. It's everywhere in Virginia. Every single year I see a severe drought. I see corn not pollinate somewhere in the state of Virginia every year, but it's usually small pockets. This year, from South Carolina right on up to Pennsylvania, we're under a severe drought. If you look at the U.S. Drought Monitor right now, it's a week and a half old, but it's lining up from Georgia all the way up to New York, and it's really bad. So bad that today was the first day I got phone calls on farmers actually terminating their corn because it didn't pollinate, taking an insurance claim on it, and they're asking what they can plant afterwards. And it kind of got me thinking it was a good opportunity to talk with you about what the best options are. And I can't sit here and say you need to go back and replant with corn or replant with soybeans, but I do want to talk about the specific options and what to do, what to look for. The first thing is not to make your judgment too early. If corn lives and pollinates well, it can still fill kernels. I've seen corn stress and roll up for 2 weeks and still almost yield 200 bushels in places. So if we can get through pollination, the most critical point, we still have an opportunity to fill kernels. If we don't pollinate, there are no kernels to fill. And that's when termination and destroying the crop becomes an option. I want to show you two scenarios. One, the corn pollinated, and if we get rain in the near future, these kernels will fill out and we can have decent yields, surprising yields. We've lost top end yields because we've lost a lot of our leaf area, but we have a normal size ear to fill. We just don't have all the leaves to maximize those ears. So rain in this particular area that I'm getting ready to show you can still result in a decent crop. So I talk a lot about that lower canopy. These leaves have fired up. The plant has stolen water and nutrients from the lower leaves to feed the growing point and actually made it through pollination well. You can see the kernels here pollinated. Stress from this point will cause kernel abortion from the tip. We'll call it tip back. But we had good pollination here, even though the corn was rolled up. This is an example of how our hybrids have really come a long way in their ability to pollinate during severe stress. I would not abandon this crop right here if the whole field looked like this. Now, if we don't get rain in 2 weeks, all of those kernels will abort. We end up in the same situation with nothing. But right now, let's say it started raining. We got rain this week and it kept right on. Even though it looks this bad right now, we still have 160, 170 bushel yield potential on the table. But we need it very soon. So take a good look at that. Look at pollination. You can always cut the husk back and look at the kernels. Earlier in the season, if it's just pollinated, this was pollinated a few weeks ago, but if it just pollinated, you can do a shake test. Once a kernel pollinates, the silk disconnects. So you can peel the husk back very carefully. Don't pull the silks off, but you shake the ear, and if the silks fall off, they've pollinated. If they're still attached, that means they haven't pollinated. So you can do it earlier than this, but I'm gonna walk down a little bit further in the field to show you an area that didn't pollinate. This is worth terminating because the pollen has shed, it didn't pollinate the ear, and we will not have this will essentially be zero. So you can see that the corn plant is fired up all the way to the top. Once these leaves at the top of the plant turn brown, that plant pretty much gives up. But the biggest issue here is that we shed pollen and we had silk lock, meaning that we didn't have enough moisture to push the silks out of the ear. So there will be no ear, no kernels to fill. Those silks burned and the pollen dropped. So even in this situation right here, if we got rain, it would not benefit the corn. This is a zero yield. And unfortunately, in this particular location, this represents 90% of this particular farm. So let's say 10% of this field and farm averages 160 at best. You gotta look at the numbers there, and this would be a good candidate for terminating and planting another crop, and I'm gonna talk about the benefits of doing that. But you have to have your acreage report done by July 15th, but you can start processing claims as soon as you realize that it's nothing out there. The adjuster would come out, do his assessment, and if he's saying with the good areas and the bad areas you're only going to average 10 bushels per acre, well, that scenario, I'd go ahead and roll the dice. And there's four options. The way I see it, you have four options. One, you can do nothing. You can sit back and punt and say, this year's done, it's over, I'm gonna just let the corn crop go, and I'm gonna focus on the other farms and what other good that I have. The other option would be to knock this corn crop down and replant corn once we do get some moisture. Several things to look out for there. One, you want something with a lot of drought and heat tolerance, because we're planting later in the summer. You really want, out here where we are on the East Coast and Mid-Atlantic region, we really need to be using the Tricepta trait package for this late planting, because we can have fall armyworm and corn earworm damage significantly reduce yields later in the summer. You really want to look at stuff with good disease packages, and you want to watch your frost dates. I prefer going one of two ways. You can plant something really early, like 100-day corn or 98-day corn, and harvest it with the rest of your corn. You will give up some top-end yield potential, or you could, if you're far enough south, you could plant something full season still, but you got to watch your frost dates there too. So planting corn again is an option. You've already got a lot of your fertilizer here. You would want to reapply some nitrogen at planting, but your phosphorus and your potassium, especially because of a death because of drought, should still be here in the soil. Just watch your disease and watch your product placement there. Never go back with the exact same product. Don't plant the same variety back to back. You're going to have a lot of disease pressure there once we start getting some moisture, but that is a viable option. A lot of your inputs are already there. Planting, option number 3. So option number 1 is not doing anything. Option number 2 would be planting corn. Option number 3 would be coming back with soybeans here. I have personally done this in the past. I had one year where it was successful, one year where it was not. And the reason it wasn't successful is because of my pre-emerge herbicide program that reactivated after the beans were already up and growing, and we finally got good rain. It reactivated, whether it was atrazine or the post-spray residual that I had in the tank. The soybeans were 3 or 4 inches high, and we had a big rain event and they died. That corn herbicide package can make a difference in this being successful or not. So you got to pay close attention to the herbicides that you used if you want to go that route. It's really a toss-up. For me, it's 50-50. If you want to go back with beans, you're going to have to run the risk of them dying if the herbicide is still active once you get rain. You want to talk to your chemical reps about that and read your labels to see what the odds of that happening really are. And the fourth option that I want to bring up is one not a lot of people think about, and it could be a cover crop program that benefits next year's crop, or it could even be a hay crop that you plant. A lot of, really, where this drought is across the whole East Coast, hay's going to be short. So if you've got corn that's dying and you want to go back with some sorghum Sudan grass or some Japanese millet and bale it for hay in August, I imagine hay this summer and this winter is going to pay a pretty good premium, just because it's going to be a big shortage of it. If you want to go a more traditional cover crop route instead of something that you could cut for hay, it'd be a great time to come into these fields, especially where we had drought on these sands where there's a compaction layer. Break up this compaction layer, because we're not in a time crunch. We've got plenty of time to rip and subsoil and break that root restricting zone and establish a cover crop to keep those fractures open. And you got plenty of time to do that instead of abandoning the fields. We've got 2.5 months in a lot of places of good growing degree units where we can do a lot of benefit, from retaining some of the fertilizer that we spent on the corn crop already, to creating some nitrogen for next year with legumes, to tillage, keeping those fractures open after we break that compaction layer with some subsoil work. If some of these areas have really bad nematode issues, we could fumigate the ground with some mustard. There's a lot of good cover crop options that we could implement earlier in the year and have a lot more efficacy because we're implementing it earlier in the summer. But I discourage farmers from giving up and just doing nothing, because it's good to have living roots in the ground year round. Unfortunately, this first go round on a lot of acres was a bust, and this corn crop did die. But it's also going to have some opportunity for us to do some good things for next year. And even though these acres here aren't going to be profitable, hopefully crop insurance in this scenario gets the farmer his money back, we have an opportunity to make some improvements for next year. And I can promise you, it's not about selling you seed right now. It's about making the most of this. It breaks my heart to look at the radar and in the afternoons and see the very few scattered storms that are around, and know all the customers and acres that are out there that are really suffering and going backwards fast. And I'm interested in helping any way I can, and I want to bring you value. And even in the worst scenarios like this, there's opportunity here to help, and that's what I want to do. So if you have a situation like this play out where the corn doesn't pollinate and you take an early insurance claim and they come out and adjust it, and you want to talk about what options are best for your operation and what kind of value that you can offer those acres this fall or next year, give me a call. Let's sit down and talk. Like I said, I'm interested in helping any way I can. My number is 804-445-4333. Take care.